Schools are under pressure. We know that. They're under pressure all the time. But this is, it's not something different. Maybe a little unusual, but it's the thousands of school-aged immigrants arriving in the country. Education leaders have described having to use libraries and even halls as classrooms to deal with their ballooning roles, pressure on teacher capacity. They are scrambling to find staff to help new students, especially ones where English is not their first language. The Ministry of Education say they are working to add hundreds of classrooms by the end of the year, which is not that far away. The latest Stat NZ migration data shows 221,400 immigrants entered New Zealand in the year to 2024, offset by 138,600 leaving a net gain of nearly 83,000. And then of that, the kids that go to school, between 5 to 17-year-olds, we've got around 21, almost 22,000 extra. Stats NZ doesn't have an actual breakdown of age by country of residents readily available, but the top source countries of immigrants are India, then the Philippines, and then China. Secondary Principals Association President and Papatoetoe High School Principal and a good friend of the platform is Vaughan Couillault, and he joins me now. Good morning, Vaughan.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm good. So I don't want you to give me exact numbers because you probably don't know, but what do you think are the amount of schools that are having to do makeshift classrooms? We talked about the halls. Where else are they being put? In libraries? I mean, is it we're talking 50% of schools, 60%?
Oh, there's a fair chunk in Auckland, and so that sort of number's a bit hard because it doesn't descend evenly across the country. So when migrants obviously come into the country, they don't spread themselves nice and beautifully evenly between all of the main centres. Yeah. Sort of at the moment, Auckland takes the brunt of it, to be fair. And in the upper parts of Waikato there. So mostly the North Island, although Christchurch is seeing a bit of a push. And so in some places there's role decline, and in other cases like Auckland there's significant role growth. So in Auckland I know that there's about 80 or 90 schools that are due some of those classrooms that you mentioned, and the team that I've been working with at the ministry, because I sit on a little governance group to help support that from a practitioner point of view, are working pretty hard to get some modular and some quick builds up that are safe, warm, dry, fit for purpose. And not going to cost $1 million a classroom. So there's all sorts of creative thinking happening to try. Well, I was going to
ask you that, Vaughan, because I live opposite a college, and they have prefab classrooms that they put up a couple of years ago, which went up pretty quick, and they are only now kind of finishing off the new block that the students will go into. So so they got onto it quite quickly. Is that something that the schools will be able to access?
Yeah, hopefully. So I think there's something just in excess of 100 classrooms getting pushed around the Auckland area, because actually that's bearing, as I said before, the brunt of the role growth situation. My own school, for example, has got a couple of classrooms pending, and we've just engaged a project manager to try and get a couple of extra classrooms on and get them ready to walk in and flick the lights on in readiness for the beginning of next year. We're okay at the moment, but we like other schools in the area, have got a bit of a nudge expected, another 100 or 200 kids, and that brings with it pressures, right? So when you're talking about 22,000 school-age kids, when you think about 25 students as a classroom, that's 800 odd teachers that we need, and we in the secondary space in particular we're already behind the eight ball a bit, and so it just shows that additional 53 odd million in teacher training that came out in the budget was very much needed in terms of trying to get young Kiwis that are finishing their degrees into the teaching profession.
Vaughan, tell me about the pressure on especially the ESOLs, the English for speakers of other language. Because I gather there would be is it a huge number of teachers available for that?
No, it's not a huge number of teachers available for anything.
For anything.
But you mentioned those top three countries, right? And those top three countries that you mentioned, English isn't necessarily the language that they all speak there in the first instance. So when you're talking about about migrant patterns, most of those enrolments bring with them complications. And I don't mean that from a dark sense. I mean, English is not the first language. There's learning to catch up on. They've learned in another system. It's not as seamless as moving someone who's done all their schooling in New Zealand from Wellington to Auckland. It's a lot more challenging than that. And ESOL support is one of those challenges. And again, at my school, for example, and I'm no different to a number of schools that are experiencing significant role growth in Auckland, we in March of last year had 100 and something ESOL students, and by the same time this year we had closer to 400. So a massive increase in the number of ESOL students. And so you've got to staff it, right? And you can't staff that at 1 to 30 because you're talking about emergent literacy and literacy acquisition. So you're learning to read as opposed to reading to learn, and there's quite a difference between those two concepts. And there's not an abundance of teachers anywhere. So in my particular instance, I've employed a couple of ESOL teachers, but I've had to steal them from somewhere else. It's not added to the fleet of teachers available. It's just people sort of reshuffling based on transport or making it easier to get to work or whatever their situation might be.